Well, good morning. And I hope that this is a wonderful day for you. As a matter of fact, let's just call it a wonderful day. Even if you don't know what's going to happen today, I want you to set your mind before you see your circumstances. That's why we call it a mindset. I am Darrell J. Bennett, and you are listening to the voice of Darrell J. Bennett. And I want to speak today about suicide. I want to talk today about a very stigmatizing subject. Wherever there's stigma, Satan is abounding. And I want to talk about that today. Let me first just say thank you for listening wherever you are. I don't take it for granted. Whether you're listening in your car, you're listening at home, you're listening on your iPhone, your iPad, your iWatch, your Android like me. I still have an Android, y'all. I haven't switched over to Team iPhone. Or maybe you're just in a space where someone else is playing my voice and you're hearing it. I don't think it's an accident. I think it's a divine appointment. I think it's a divine appointment, for nothing happens by accident or coincidence or by serendipity, but it is by divine design. I want to tell you why I'm talking about that today, as the nation really shifts its attention to the death of Mandisa and some of the struggles that she shared around mental health and suicide. I think this is a time for us to talk about this. Now, let me put a disclaimer. I do not know her. I do not know why she passed. I'm not suggesting that she passed by suicide. That's not what this is about. But I do think, because there is so much talk about it now, this is an awesome opportunity to talk about something that probably everybody listening to me has dealt with on one level or not. And if you haven't, you are close to someone certainly who's dealing with it. And so I think we've got to talk about it. Before I talk about suicide, I just feel in my heart I want to talk about stigma. You know, when anything is stigmatized, we tend to let it, we suppress it, we put it in the shadows. And that's where Satan really does his best work. You know, I once heard a pastor say, we're only as sick as our secrets. You know, and it took me years to really understand what he meant. And I don't just think we're as sick as our secrets individually. I think we're as sick as our secrets collectively. Think about, in this nation, the things that we struggle with most, whether it's sexual violence, sexual abuse, or in this case, we're talking about suicide. These are the places and spaces that are destroying communities, but we don't want to talk about it. We just don't want to talk about it. And because we don't talk about it, it really allows a space for the enemy to speak into our lives. So I want to ask you, as we approach this conversation, to uh, could you hear me without judgment? Can you hear me without putting labels on even the word suicide? I didn't know another word to say. I wanted you to know what I'm talking about. But even that word, it brings up feelings for many people. I'm going to use a 2024 term. It triggers people. And many times when we say something triggers people, that means in um, uh, our new age parlance, well, I don't want to talk about it anymore because it triggers me. But maybe it triggers you because it needs to be dealt with. Because it needs to be dealt with. So this is not about triggering you. This is not about trying to talk about something for the sake of being provocative or on the edge. This is coming from my heart, because I know what it's like to feel like life is just not worth it. I know what it's like to feel like everything that I've worked for has really come for naught. I know what it's like to go through nights where it's just like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it into the morning, you know? And I think it's okay. I think it is okay to experience the feelings. My intention for talking to you today is that you know that you're not alone. You know that there are resources. You know that there's help. You know that there is a support system, and that you don't have to feel ashamed about it. So I think really as I'm talking, and so much is coming to me, this isn't just about suicide, as it were. It's about stigma, and it's about shame. And I believe that before someone takes that final step, it's a road. It's a road of ideations. It's a road of, typically, that leads people through stigma and through shame. I can't talk to anybody about this. What would people think about me if they knew I was really struggling with this? Um, we all struggle on some level with what I call imposter syndrome. I call it that, right? People call it that. I just pick that up. You know what I mean? Imposter syndrome. If you don't know what I mean, imposter syndrome is the sense that you're not really who you say you are. We all have that to some extent. I once heard someone say everybody's a hypocrite on some level because none of us always practice what we preach. I mean, you could take the best teacher, and the best teacher may tell you, let me give you a different example. A therapist. I've seen therapists who are great. They're phenomenal therapists and they can coach you through the stuff that you have going on in your life. And then you kind of pull back the veil of their own lives. You realize you're in a messy relationship and you got some stuff going on in your own life that you need to listen to what you're saying. But instead of looking at that person saying you're a hypocrite, the truth of the matter is all of us have spaces and places in our lives that are not completely congruent with what we wish our lives would be. That is the danger of social media. I don't think the problem is social media itself. I think the problem is when we start to believe everything we post. you know, we post the happy days. Generally, you don't post when you feel like you're not going to go on. You generally don't post your worst day. And even if you post your worst day, you put a veneer on it. You talk about it from a space of empowerment. Rarely do we share vulnerably exactly what we feel all the time on social media, and neither should you, because social media is not a place for therapy. I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. It's not a place for therapy. Everybody don't need to know everything, okay? But the problem becomes when we start to believe that life is all ups and all rainbows and all sunshines and everything is great. And so there's a voice of the enemy that comes and says, if people knew this about you, what would they think? And that begins this space of shame, and it begins a space of stigma. And then it begins this place where we feel like I can't talk to anybody. And in isolation and in shame and in stigma, that's where Satan does his best work. I would encourage you, read my book, Come Back Swinging. I talk about some of the challenges that I had in my early adult years and some decisions that I made that were really destructive for my life at that time. And those decisions came out of not so much a place of depravity, but it came out of a place of depression. It came out of a place of loneliness. It came out of a place of self-sabotage. See, I'm talking a lot of things here because you say suicide, I call it self-sabotage. I call it where you feel like nobody hears you. So the way of being heard is to take some act. And we typically, when I say we now, I'm talking about people who are only focused on the 3D world, who are only focused on the carnal, who are only focused on the outset. They talk about the what. They may even talk about the how, but they don't talk about the why. They don't talk about the impetus. And we've got to begin to get past what people did and what came across your Instagram feed and what you saw on World Star Hip Hop and how in the world could they do that? And instead of asking how in the world can they do it, why? What was the motivation? And when you start to recognize we're all more alike than we are different, I think that's what's going to move the needle. So let me just talk about this for a second. Suicide. It's a hard topic to talk about because all of us have been touched by it in some way. We either know someone who's killed themselves or we have ourselves and many times thought about it. I think of a friend that I had. Okay, I'll be honest. He wasn't a friend. Let me be honest. He wasn't a friend. I just knew him in college. He was a freshman when I was a junior. Yes, he was 2 years younger than me. And he came to Morehouse for about a year. He was pretty active in student government. That's how I knew him and some of my other friends because, we were showing him the ropes for student government and helping him with things. And, I'll be honest, at those ages, tensions are running high. He said some things to my friends. I didn't like what he said. We went back and forth. There was mean-spiritedness. But I'll tell you this, it's probably about maybe toward the end of my senior year, someone said, you know about such and such and such? And I said, yeah, I remember him. Of course. They said, they found him in his room dead. And that was that was rough for me. Um, that was rough for me because I immediately, honestly, thought about some of the last things I said to him. That, I'm just being honest. Um, I thought about his experience at the college. I thought about what he may have been going through. I felt bad because I, I guess I just didn't think that he was even struggling like that. I mean, from the outside looking in, he was, if I remember right, I think he was half Italian and half black. He was a very nice looking person, extremely well spoken, seemed to have it all together. And from what we heard, how it goes at these HBCUs and people just kind of putting on facades. What do I know? From what we heard, he came from a well-to-do family. I mean, he didn't come from the Rockefellers, but he wasn't struggling either. So in my mind, what do it just seemed to come out of left field. You seem to have a great family. You come from a great family. You got money. You're a nice looking guy. You're smart. You've got friends. You got family. You got women that like, girls that like. I mean, he's 19, 20 at the time. So these, the girls over at Spelman's, Clark Atlanta, other things. And then this was when social media was really kind of kicking off. And it's like, he seemed to be doing well. And then it's like, wow. And that was the beginning of me really starting to think, we really don't know what people go through. And I can tell you in my life, I don't want to make this all about me, but I can tell you in my life, I've dealt with times where I definitely just didn't want to go on. And, it's come in ebbs and flows. But I just, let me say this. Somebody listen to me is like, I never really felt that way, Darrell. I never really had the feeling of that. Um, or I've, maybe had it once or twice, but it's really not that serious of a thing. And this is what I've believed. One, some of us, because of the way that we're wired, are more prone to highs and lows and feelings of highs and lows. That's the first thing. The second thing is the enemy attacks people who are a threat to his kingdom. So sometimes, you're not struggling, or you don't have these thoughts, or you don't have these feelings, or you're not really under attack because you're not really a threat. You're working your job and you're living your life and you're posting on social media and you're doing what you do, but your life is not a threat to the kingdom of hell. And so hell ain't really bothered by you. But for those of us that are speakers and motivators and people who are preachers and pastors and people who are taking their lives to encourage people and lift people up, I believe that we have to be more on guard about this, because the enemy is out for people that are trying to encourage others. It's the truth. You can say what you want, but it's the truth. Some of the attacks in your life, you could probably get rid of if you stop living with purpose. When you're living with purpose, there is a level of attack your life just comes under, because the enemy hates to see people be empowered, enriched, inspired, motivated, to feel better about themselves. So anybody that's moving the needle in that direction, we have to be more on guard. It's the truth of the matter. And if you're a friend of someone who is just motivating people and encouraging people and loving on people and talking about the goodness of God, and even if they're not a Christian, so to speak, but they are one of those people that leans into making people feel better. They're comedians, they're singers that are talking about hope and you can get up. Those are the ones that you need to be checking on. I had recently, one of my friends, he's a sales director at a company that I did some work for a few years back. And he said, man, I don't want you to think anything of it. I really don't reach out to you that much because I know you'll always be all right. And I know he meant it in a good way, but I'm thinking in the back of my mind, that's the problem. Just because I carry it well doesn't mean it's not heavy. Just because you see me smiling doesn't mean that I'm not going through. And we have a tendency in this world. So that's the other piece of it. It's not just that the attack is heavier for those of us that are encouragers and motivators and that are spreading light to the world. It's not just the attack is heavier. Oftentimes we're overlooked because people think, oh, your life is great. I was going to church about a month ago, and the brother said to me at the door, he said, man, I want your life. And I know he meant well. And I just kind of laughed, said, you're traveling here and you're going there. And I see what you're doing on social media. And I just said, oh, I appreciate that. To God be the glory. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, first of all, no, you don't want my life. You know, I once heard it said that if everybody in the world got to take their biggest problem and throw it up into the tree, throw it up into this big, massive tree. But the caveat is you had to go up and pick one down in exchange. I heard the person say that most people would take the chance and go ahead and throw up their problem in the tree. And when they went up and looked at other problems to pull down, they would pick the one they already had and come right on back down. Because the truth of the matter is, you think you want it until you have it. You don't know the cost of my alabaster box. And that's after writing the book, Come Back Swinging. You hear what I'm saying? That's after me being very vulnerable about some of the struggles I've had in my life and some of the things that I've had to overcome and some of the things I'm still fighting through. So it can be really isolating for people who are encouragers and motivators and preachers and pastors and people who are delivering hope and that are bringing light to the world, because it almost feels like you're screaming in the middle of a room and, did you not hear me? And then people pull on us more. And so I want to get to the solutions. The solutions is I want to first talk to my people who are listening. That's you. You're an encourager. You're a motivator. Maybe it doesn't manifest in speaking per se, but you spread light. You spread hope. You're the friend that everybody comes to when there's a problem. You're the one that people always say is the level-headed one. You're the like the standard, so to speak. I want to talk to you for a second. The first thing is, don't believe the applause of the crowd. I'm telling you, don't believe it. Because they will say Hosanna today, and then next week they'll yell crucify him. I'm telling you, they will. Because that's the world we live in. They like you now, and they find out one thing about you, and they may be gone. So you can't believe the applause of the crowd. You can like the applause, you can be appreciative for the applause, but you cannot believe the applause, because the applause is temporary. Why am I telling you that? Once you realize that, you realize you don't have to hold up an image for anybody. Just be you. Secondly, create a space where you can be vulnerable with somebody, not with the world, not with the internet. That's where people make their mistake. I remember when Romeo and his father, Master P, were beefing on the internet. And, Romeo made some good points. He really did. And Master P made some great points as well when they were kind of going back and forth. And my heart hurt for them because they seem to be a close father and son. I don't know them again, but they seem to be close as father and son. And fathers and sons and parents and children go through issues in their adult years where we kind of question, well, I never could say this and now I could say it. But anyway, Master P says at one point, he says, son, social media is not a place for healing or therapy. I'm like, sir, he's right about that. It's not. I love social media. I'm using social media right now to share this message with you. I think it's a beautiful, amazing, spectacular thing, but it's not a place for therapy. You gotta be super careful about what you share. You need to create a space where you can be vulnerable with people who are invested in your success, people who they care nothing about the outside. They just want to see you win. And sometimes when I see people pouring out their heart on social media, and I'm talking about people who are, encouragers and all the people I'm talking about, spreading light, I think to myself, I'm talking about when it's a pouring out to the sense of, it's almost like they are crying out for attention on the internet. I'm not just talking about they're having a vulnerable moment. They're crying out for attention. I think to myself, I wonder if it's because they don't have a space where they can do that. I had someone once say, I was on a radio show and he said, you always smile, but the truth is life isn't always good. I said, who told you I smile? Because life is good. I mean, you don't know what I'm going through. But I smile because of what I believe life can be. I smile because I don't think frowning is going to make it any better. But the more important point is when I'm having a bad day, I'm not going to tell you about it. I know I use a lot of movie references, y'all, but just one of my favorite movies is uh, Saving Private Ryan. I love that movie. Haven't seen it in a while, but I think it's a great movie. And this is part where Tom Hanks, who I believe is the captain or the major or whatever, they're walking along the town. They're walking in between towns. He's walking ahead of his battalion that he's leading. And they say, Captain, the soldiers that are with him, we complain. We always complain, but we never hear you complain. We never hear you griping. I think they use the word griping. You never gripe. And he said, oh, I gripe, but I gripe up. You gripe to me, I gripe to the next level. I love that line because what he was saying is don't get this twisted. It's not that I don't have struggles too. It's not that I don't have days where I get out of bed and I don't know if I can make it. It's not that I don't have times where I just don't want to go on. It's not that I don't have moments where I pick up the phone and I just want to cry my heart out. The difference is I don't write to people who can't help me. Who Let me say it different because I don't mean it to sound rude if I say I don't want to gripe to people that aren't on my level because I don't want you to hear it that way. So hear it from my heart. I gripe to people where there is a space of relationship and I am safe to be vulnerable. You see? So you can call it fake if every time, even on my podcast, I'm like, hey, this is Darrell. Welcome to my podcast. I'm so excited to see you here. And I am. That doesn't mean there are days that I'm not stressing or even moments right before that I'm not stressing. You can call it fake because I don't get here and talk about that. But the point of the matter is I talk about that to people where there's a place and a space for vulnerability. You need a space to be vulnerable. Social media ain't it, y'all. It's not it. You can be faux vulnerable on social media. I call it faux vulnerable. You can give a little piece. But you got to be careful when you give people a sword and they aren't in your corner. Because now you told too many people your business. And that also can be an issue. Now you told too many people your weaknesses. Now you told too many people what you struggle with. And now, because people know your triggers, they're using it to push your buttons. So when I talk about triggers, when I talk about trauma, when I talk about pain, when I talk about what I'm really going through in my heart, I'm talking about it with people who are mentors and coaches in my spiritual covering. People who I know are in my corner. People who I know when I get off the phone, I know they're not going to go and talk to other people about it. People who I know just want to see me win. And it's a small circle. It's a small, tight circle, and you need that. The third thing I want to say is you need self-care. I know it's a word we kind of throw around, but it is the truth. If it's one thing that my prison experience taught me is that if you don't take time for self-care, life will put you aside. Life will put you in timeout. Some of the decisions I made in my young adult years that led to me going to prison was because I just didn't know how to stop. And when I say stop, I mean just stop. I didn't know how to take a pause from life. And I self-sabotage in a disturbing way. I didn't know how. I didn't know that you gotta take time. You can't keep pouring because if you pour from your principle rather than from your interest, you're in a dangerous place. Listen to me. This is what I have learned. You've got, and I'm talking to people who are encouragers and people who are folks that are spreading light, and maybe your passion and your profession is pulling people up and encouraging people and educating people and inspiring people and empowering people and helping people get to the next level. You can only pour from the overflow. And I am very good about that now. I will turn my phone smooth off. I will block your call before I will allow you to disturb my peace. It took me a while to get here. Now you call it me not being responsive, and you might call it me having the big head. It's not any of that. It's not that I think I'm better than you. It's not that I'm ghosting you. It's that I've got to take time for me. I can only pour from you from my overflow. When I said principle versus interest, that was one of the things that I've learned in my wealth journey, that to build real wealth, you got to learn how to create a principle and use that as a place of investment, use that as a place of base, and let that money work for you. And you live off of the interest, the overflow. You hear what I'm saying to you? I want you to live off of the overflow. I pour out of the overflow. If I ain't got it, I'm not going to give it to you. I'm just going to keep it. I wasn't always like that, because before, even if I was having a hard day, if you called me, I would still pick up the phone. I'm not going to pick up the phone now, because two traumatic people ain't going to get it where we need to get it. I'll give it to you another way. The blind leading the blind, and they're both going to fall into the ditch. And so some of you, it's coming out of a good place in your heart, but it's coming from a bad space in your life. Listen to me. Because your heart says, I want to give, but your life is telling you, you need to slow down. You need to take time. You need to shut the door. That's why I know some pastors, 12 months, they take 12 months to preach, or 11 months they preach, in the 12th month, they're just on vacation. You might think that that's weird. You don't see your pastor show up one Sunday and you think the pastor backslid. That's the problem. Pastor can't keep coming every Sunday to preach to you and your issues and your struggles and your traumas and what you got going on. Pastor's got to take time for pastor's got to be poured into. Pastor needs some Sundays where he's just sitting in the Word. He's sitting, and not even necessarily at his spiritual father's church where he's in the pulpit with the pastor, or on the side where everybody can see him. Sometimes pastor got to put on a hoodie and just go in another church and put sunglasses on and just sit in the back and receive, because he don't need people pulling on him. He don't need people coming up to him afterwards and say, Pastor, I need to talk to you about this going on in my life. Because everything that we pour out, it takes something from us. I had to learn that. Even when you pour from your overflow, it's something from you. How do I know? It was said that Jesus was amongst a throng of people. Imagine that. So imagine if, like, you see a video of Justin Bieber or Beyonce or Michael Jackson, and you've seen these, these moments and spaces where everybody's pulling on them. There's so many people. They've got security, and maybe they're walking through a crowd, but there's so many people that, security can't really stop much. They're literally just pushing them through the crowd because it's throngs and throngs of people. And the Bible says, I'm giving you the image in your mind. The Bible says there were throngs of people around Jesus, and it was people touching him from all places. But Jesus stopped at one point and said, who touched me? And one of the disciples, kind of in a moment of bewilderment, said, Jesus, a lot of people touched you. It's throngs of people. But Jesus said, no, but somebody touched me. See, because the woman didn't just touch his garment, she touched his spirit. See, you got to understand, every time you pour out a word, every time you give encouragement, every time you pick up the phone, every time you give someone a word of prayer, every time you give them a word of encouragement, every time you hear what they're going through with their baby mother or something that's going on in their life, every time you hear the trauma in their life, it's pulling something away from your spirit. You got to understand that. When you realize that, you'll take more time to build your capacity. Because if Jesus stopped in the middle and said, who touched me? Because he felt the withdrawal. You see what I'm saying? There's a withdrawal. And my question is, are you one of those that pours and gives and loves and serves, and you don't realize that there's been a withdrawal? You cannot pour from a deficit. So this is a message about stigma, yes, shame, yes, suicide, yes, but as I'm switching to the solution, this is a message about self-awareness. This is a message about knowing, wait a minute, I'm coming to my limit. I once heard it said, this is a churchy saying, but I once heard it said, if you've been struggling for 25 years with crack cocaine, when you get saved, the first place you should not minister is a crack house. It sounds reasonable, right? But how many times we do that? Right? So let's take it out of a church context. How many times are there things in our own lives that we've struggled through and we've overcome on some level? And then we want to help the people out of what we just came out of. And you got to be careful with that. I'm not saying you aren't called for it. I'm not saying you're unassigned to it. All I'm saying is you got to be careful with that, because you have to recognize that you're still in the battle. And so sometimes what happens is, in our passion for wanting to help people and in our rush to be the teacher, rather than just continuing to be the student, we go and pour into other people, not realizing that their trauma is actually triggering ours. And what you thought was dead, and what you thought was buried, and what you thought you overcame, and what you thought was done with, actually starts to rear its head. I know I'm doing this on a podcast, but if I was in front of a live audience, I would say, you ain't gotta say amen, because I know I'm talking the truth. I know I'm talking the truth. Because all of us have heard a story where someone has told the story and it made us think about something going on in our own lives. I'm telling you. And when those things happen, it doesn't mean necessarily that we got to end the conversation. It doesn't mean we're in a bad place, but we've got to be aware of that. How many times are we allowing ourselves to be pulled down by the people that we said that we were trying to save? Have you ever tried to save somebody who was drowning? I'm being real. I'm being honest. I'm just asking you. Have you ever, I don't know if they were in a pool, if they were at the beach, and they were on a lake, they fell off a pier, and you saw them drowning, so you went over to save them. And that's a good thing. We want to save people. But I'm going to tell you something. You got to know your own strength, because you will try to save a person, and in their franticness and in their frustration and in everything that they got going on, they will pull you down if you're not careful. I've known people to say, I'm trained to save people, but if I got to punch you to get you to knock you out, to pull you ashore, I'll do it. Now, I'm not there yet. I will take a stick and put it in the water and try to pull you in, because you're not going to drown me with your problems. It took me a while to get there. You call it selfish. I call it self-awareness, because I know that I have not fully apprehended. See, that's the thing. Isn't that what the apostle said? I know I have not fully attained. I know that about me. I know that there are certain places and spaces I can't get into. Somebody was telling me recently, said, I want to tell you about this thing. I said, you know what? I can't hear that right now. And they kind of looked at me a little funny. I can't hear it right now. I didn't use the word trigger. I didn't use the word trauma, because I don't need to go there. All I need to do is set a boundary. I think I'm talking about boundaries here. I can't hear that right now. I'm not your God. Take that to your God. I'm not even your spiritual covering. I'm not your therapist. Right? It's so many things. You just see me as a person of encouragement. That's nice. But right now, I didn't tell them all this, but I'm thinking in the back of my mind, right now, I'm going through too much to pour into you. And I know that. And I know that. To your own self be true, people. Isn't that what Shakespeare said? To your own self be true. Know where you are. Because if you know where you are, you can bless people more. This is where I want to end. Encourage somebody today that you know as an encourager. That's what I'm going to ask you. Just send them some encouragement. Just send them a text. Say, you know what? I know you're always pouring out to people. I just want to say you're loved and I care about you. And I'm here for you if you ever need me. I guarantee that will make their day. I have a friend. She's like exceptionally beautiful. She is. There's some people, they're just really gifted with physical beauty. And she's one of those that I think she's beautiful, but what crystallized it in my mind is over probably 12 years or so of me knowing her. I would say I could probably count on my hand the number of guys that have either seen her picture or been around her who have not kind of whispered in my ear, she got a man, she got a husband, and y'all together. She's one of those type of women. People just like her looks. This is the problem, though. I know her pretty well. She's like a sister to me. Yes, she's very beautiful physically, but she's like a sister to me. And she said to me, Darrell, you won't believe this, but a lot of guys don't hit me up on my Instagram or on my social media. Guys don't really holler at me like that. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I believe it because I know how that goes. I believe it. Because the thing is, we think, kind of like the encouragement thing, we tend to think that there are certain people who they already got it together, or in this case, everybody's hollering at them. So the guys are thinking, I don't want to necessarily reach out because they probably already, her inbox is full. Not realizing that everybody else is thinking the same exact thing. Literally, because she's so exceptionally beautiful, like she's been known. This is what, some people have just been known from the time that they were young, right? They just, she's got the good hair and she's got the all of that. And I don't say that when I say good hair. What I mean, I'm using that in air quotes. Everything you would say, right, from a beauty perspective, I would say 9 times out of 10, she kind of checks that off. And so the irony about it is it also became a stumbling block in her life, because either she found people were only coming to her because they just wanted something. They really didn't want a genuine relationship. They just wanted something out of her beauty, right? I'm making the analogy to people who are encouragers, because sometimes people come to you and they don't want to be your friend. They just need a word of encouragement. I had a person recently, they booked a call from me for one of my webinars, and she said, honestly, we never really had any intention of purchasing any of your services. We just needed encouragement. Thinking in the back of my mind, you're wasting my time, but I appreciate it. I appreciate the compliment that you wanted encouragement, but this is not the space for that, because I give encouragement publicly for free, but this is the space for people who want my personal services, who are willing to invest. So I'm making the analogy, and I try then not to get frustrated. I try not to let my face fall, but it's the same concept, right? So you take this woman, right? She's looking for a genuine relationship. And by the way, she's not married, right? Some of her friends who, you would probably say, they're maybe average or whatever. I'm just going according to looks now. I don't mean to say this in any rude way, or even they would say she's far more pretty or whatever. They're married, they've got children, they've got all the things in some cases that she's looking to have, because people have either come there because just they want that one thing, what that one thing is, or they don't come because they think she's got it together. They think so many people are already reaching out. They think her inbox is full. Go back to where I talked about people that are encouragers and preachers and singers and comedians. You think, well, I don't need to reach out to them. They just got done coming down and sharing the word. Look at all the people that are pulling on them. Look at how encouraging that word is. But but I need you to realize that just because people carry it well doesn't mean they're not carrying it. It doesn't mean it's not heavy. And to whom much is given, much is required. And there's oftentimes a harder burden. So what I'm trying to say to you is, for those people that are in your life that are givers, that's really what it comes down to, givers. Because some people are just givers. I don't mean this to be rude, but it's the truth. Some people have the gift of giving. I have that gift. We're just givers. They're just givers. They give of their time. They give of their money. They give of their talent. They give. They just give. They want to give. They desire to give. It's their heart to give. I'm going to ask you to pour into their life. Even if you think in the back of your mind, their inbox is already full. I just want to share encouragement. I'm giving you what to do for people who are encourage people a lot. I'm not talking about going in your DMs and trying to get some girl that you think is highly beautiful. That's not what this is about. Although, you might take that as a sign, right? Because how many people you think their inbox is full and you won't approach them, and you're not realizing they're just waiting on somebody. They're waiting on you to make a move. I'm telling you, I know I'm switching back and forth between this because I feel like somebody needs to hear that. Even in relationships, I've learned this. Some of the people that you just think are so, I'll give you an instance. In New York City, if you go to the club, I'm not a clubber. I've probably been at the club 10 times in my whole time here in New York over the past 13 years. But I went to the club one time, and I remember it was one particular night, Rosario Dawson was in the club. And I went up to her and I asked to dance with her, and she danced with me. And she said to me, in the middle, I was respectful. I'm not putting my hands all over her or whatever. But, we danced, and I was thrilled to be able to do it. And she said to me in the middle of there, she said, you know what? You're the first dude that walked up to me in this whole club. And I said, I'm thinking in my mind, I believe it. Other people were gawking. Other people were taking pictures. Other people were like, that's Rosario Dawson. Other people are nervous and intimidated. And oh my gosh. And what I'm saying to you here is, you never really know. That's what I kind of think this is all about. You never really know what lack is in people's life. You think it's not lack because you see the outside. That's why the Bible says that God searches the heart. Man looks at the outward appearance. Man looks at the outward appearance. How many times do you see on TikTok? It gets me when you see these videos where they'll say this is what suicide looks like, and somebody committed suicide, right, or died by suicide, whatever words we use now. I want to be respectful there, to not stigmatize it further. But you'll see a video and it says this was them 24 hours before. Yeah. And they maybe were jumping and laughing and singing and dancing with their wife, and then you find 12 hours later they're dead. Yeah, because that what does that mean? Because I was dancing and singing and jumping around, that means I don't have lack in my life? It doesn't. That maybe what I am displaying. Oh, this is gonna help somebody. This is gonna bless somebody. Maybe what I'm displaying the most is what I feel I lack more in my life. And if you saw it from a spiritual lens, you would understand that everything you see people give isn't necessarily from a place of having it, but it's from sometimes from a place of seeking for it. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second. So the next time you run up to your pastor after he's preached a message, after he's spent time laboring before God of what to bring before the people, after he's poured out his heart, after he's probably thinking about how they're going to pay the bills and how they're going to, keep the church going. And then you come up to him after the service and say, you got something you need to share with him about something's going on with your son, and pray for me because my son and all this going on. Before you do that, stop and think, what about his son? I'm just using pastors as an example. I heard somebody say recently on YouTube, 83% of pastors' children grow up and they aren't in the church. Well, think about it a different way instead of trying to bring it to a place of condemnation. Sometimes it's because the pastors pour more into you than they are into their own kids. Not Darrell J. Bennett. Whew. My first ministry is home. You heard? My first ministry is home. I dare not lay my hands on your child before I pray over mine. That's my ministry. Is the ones that God assigned to me. You're not assigned to me. You're just attached to me. Let me get off here because I want to end on a good note. So you got to know who's assigned to you and who's attached to you. So before you come up and pour out all this on your heart, ask yourself first, what might they be in need of? What might they be in need of? If you take the church sphere, many folks are trying to just make the church survive. Because only 20% of church members, for the most part, in any given church are actually giving in the church. So 80% are coming, they're eating, and they're going home. They're coming, they're eating, and they're going home. They're coming, they're stuffing their face, and they're going home. They're coming, they're getting encouragement, saying, oh, that message blessed me, and they're going home. And coming, they're hearing something, and then have the nerve when they hear some type of issue in the pastor's personal life. See, I knew it. That's why I don't go to churches. People are funny like that. So who do you go to? Think about that. You're the leader. Everybody knows you for that. You're the leader even in your market. Even in your community. So you go to the market and somebody wants a word. I know what that's like because I'm a public figure. People see me, and I've heard people say, you just seem down today. It's not that I'm down. I just don't have much to say. You seem down today. No, I'm not down. Every time you see me is not a day I'm jumping around and screaming and hollering, talking about, this is Darrell J. Bennett. I'm not going to be crying in the midst of the market, but there are times where I just kind of want to be left alone. I got some things that's on my mind. I got something, just like you hurt and you're in pain, I got stuff that I'm going through. And don't take it personally when I say I can't take that call. Don't take it personally when it's like, you know what? No, I can't hear that right now. Because people approach people who are encouragers and motivators and even comedians with this sense of entitlement. I was in the elevator. I remember with Steve Harvey. I don't know him, but we just happened to be in the elevator together because it was a fundraiser. I went to Morehouse College. I believe his daughter-in-law went to, or the daughter, what do you call it? No, not his daughter-in-law, but the daughter of his wife went to Spelman. And so, he just happened, he's in those circles, and he happened to be coming to a fundraiser for Morehouse Spelman AUC area. So, I was in the elevator with him, and he said, and he's standing there. He said, every time people see me, he's kind of saying this in the elevator, people expect me to give them a joke. Everything ain't a funny matter. And I'm like, I get it. I absolutely get it. I didn't say that to him, but I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I understand it because I understand it. Maybe not on that level, but I understand it from where I am. Oprah said that she was fine flying commercial. That's what she said. She said she was fine flying commercial, even with She was way into being a multimillionaire at this point. She said the moment she decided she needed her own plane was when she was getting on a plane one time and the woman said she wanted a hug. And the woman was not going to move away till Oprah gave her a hug. And she said that's when she decided, I need my own plane. Boundaries. Because you see Oprah out there, so you think Oprah now, because Oprah, you see the Oprah you see on television. Now Oprah got to stop everything she's doing all the time and give you a hug. I don't know. She didn't really say if she gave the woman a hug. I assume she probably did. She said the woman wasn't going to move out of her way, so she got a hug. We've all been there where somebody recognized you, saw you. They weren't going to move. They weren't going to let you finish eating until they got a picture, because their needs were more important than yours. Not knowing you may have been out trying to stay low because you just got some of the worst news of your life. So what I'm asking you is to, and I won't say this after this, but I think it's important. And then for those of us that are public, when our stuff gets out there, our personal issues, then people are the most quick to want to say something. So that's the irony. So you have the least space to really be real for who you are, and then the most judgment will come. So that's why you really got to take your time and take space to have self-care. A few things I want to say, and then I'm done. I just feel led to say this. If you're a pastor listening to me and you preach 52 weeks out of the year, even 50 weeks out of the year at your church, you should probably rethink that. I would ask you, just ask the Holy Spirit if that's wise. Maybe he called you to do that. Maybe he didn't. Maybe some of it is out of pride. Maybe some of it is out of, see, this is where we got to have a different conversation. Some of it is out of, well, if I'm not there, it's not going to run smoothly. I'm going to tell you something. You keep pouring out from a deficit, you won't be there. Okay? Because you got to take care of home first. The scripture says that Jesus knew all men, but he committed himself to no one. All right? If you are just a person that encourages and you're a motivator and you're someone out there that pours out to people, what I'm telling you is create a space. You got to create a space. You create a space. I go to some places, I have security with me. And I've had people say that. I've had people kind of pull me out. Why you got security? I got security people just like you. I don't want you talking nothing in my ear. I don't need you passing me a note. I don't need you walking up to me, telling me you got this going on. So, yeah, sometimes I have that just for a boundary. You can call it what you want. You can say what you want about me, but it needs to be a boundary. It's got to be a boundary because God has given me a word and God has spoken something in my heart, and I've got to keep that pure, and I've got to guard even the scripture says, guard your heart. Guard your heart. You see what they do at the White House. You see when they move the president, whether it's Trump or Biden or Obama, even when they're out of office, look at all of the machinations that go into place to move them from place to place. Armies are moving to ensure that there is a boundary around them. Why? Because everybody that knows you or thinks they know you and know about you can't be allowed to get to you. Imagine if that were the case. You know, I'm a studier of history, and it used to be up to like the 1920s, that port to go under the White House, you could just drive up under it. People would drive up under it and change the hood of their car and then keep driving. All right, so it was that open. Before the Civil War, there were no guards at the White House. People could just walk up. The first guards came around the Civil War. I remember when we would visit the White House in the 1990s when I was younger, you know, you could just stand in a line outside of the White House and they would let people in by groups. You know, we were just in there. Now you got to go to a congressman. You got to go to a senator. You got to get a background check. You got to get cleared. The point I'm trying to make is, with any heightened level of responsibility, there has to be an extra layer of protection. There has to be an extra level of protection. And it's not about trying to put out an image or trying to make yourself feel better than others. The point is, you got to do what you've got to do to protect what's around you. I know for me, because I'm kind of saying a lot here, but I think this is going to help somebody. I know for me, because of some of the things that I've struggled with in the past and some of the things that I've overcome, there's some people that think, oh, I can slip him a note and we're going to be doing A, B, C, and D later. So part of the reason for me creating boundaries is it's going to be hard for you to slip a note. Matter of fact, no. Give that to them. I got people with me. Give that to them. So that already cuts down on that. No, you don't need to say something in my ear. I remember one time I had people with me and somebody says, oh, I just need to talk to them privately. No. Anything you need to say privately, they're with me. They can hear it too. Because last thing I need is for us to have had a conversation or you whisper something in my ear and somebody said, well, you said this, isn't. No, 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 no. I got a witness. So that came to me only because I'm comfortable with creating boundaries. You got to get comfortable with creating boundaries, y'all, because if you don't, I'm telling you, bad things happen. And I don't want that to happen to you. And if you're one of those people, let's say you're not a pastor or preacher, right? You're not someone that's necessarily motivating, encouraging, spreading hope, a comedian, one of those people. You're just someone that's kind of in the peripheral. You do great things in your life, but you listen to me like, I really don't really understand this, Darrell. This doesn't really apply to me. This is what I'm asking you. Be an encouragement for those who are. Send a message, send a text message and say, I know everybody's pulling on you. We all know somebody in our life where you would admit a lot of people are pulling on them. A lot of people are pulling on them. And if you wonder who that person is, ask yourself who in your life, if you or the public found out something negative about them, who would get the most judgment? Those are the people I'm talking about. Don't even get me started about politicians. You don't even want to know how many politicians come and talk to me. I'm talking about come and talk to me and say, Darrell, I wish I could share this with more people. I'm like, oh, I already know. I already know what you're going through. Because you come out and talk about this or you talk about that, you don't even want to talk about the stuff sometimes the politicians are going through because you're so consumed with how people will see me. All right. I remember, I think it was John Fetterman, senator over in Pennsylvania, when he was gone for like 3 or 4 days and they said he checked himself into a mental hospital and people had an issue with that. So what would you rather him do? You find out later he shot himself and his wife. You know what I mean? I shouldn't even put that out there like that. But you know what I mean? You find out later something terrible about him. It's almost like we feel more comfortable with that because then it's like, oh yeah, You find out something secret he had going on in his life. I'm not suggesting this. I don't know him. I don't know him at all. But something secret he had going on in his life and that exploded in that way. Oh, but he checked himself into a mental hospital. Yeah, if more people felt comfortable, I guarantee there's more people that, and let me just say this, because I'm on the inside of a lot of these things, there's more people that when you hear publicly, oh, they're in the hospital for this surgery, in the hospital for that. No, they're not. They're away because they're getting self-care. They can't tell you that though. They can't tell you that because if they told you that, then you're gonna give them the side eye. You're gonna give them the side eye. You're gonna look at them less than. So they have to hide it. They've got to have their publicists, can't even get the word out, and their spokespeople concoct ruses for where they are. So we can make it a better world if we just encourage each other and we have compassion for each other. Public figures, politicians, pastors, motivators, teachers, educators, people who are moving, entertainers, people that are moving the world forward. I'm telling you, I promise you, it's not as easy as it looks. It's a great blessing, but it also comes with a great responsibility. And I just wanted to share that. This is where I'm going to end. I absolutely believe that one of the greatest things is the ability to be self-aware. If it's one word that I could use, well, I guess it's a hyphen, but you get what I'm trying to say. One term that I could use to sum up the last 52 minutes is self-awareness. It's to your own self being true. It's to your own self knowing where you stand, where you are. That's the importance of meditation. It's not to direct your thoughts. It's to observe them. That's the problem. You keep trying to direct it. You keep trying to direct the flow of your life rather than observing. What's the alarm bells that's going on? Why do I feel this way this morning? That's the importance of me going before the Holy Spirit every morning before I pick up my phone and I text you. Because I got to get right first. I got to, because sometimes you just wake up with an attitude. Actually, today, I woke up today with a song in my heart, blessed and highly favored. That's not all the time for me. There's some days I wake up in rage. I do. And I don't even know where it came from. I wake up upset. I wake up thinking about somebody that did me wrong or something that, or I perceived did me wrong. I wake up feeling insult. I wake up feeling enraged. I'm just being honest. And in those moments, I've got to take more time for myself. Because if I'm not careful, that'll bleed into the rest of my day. Because if I answer your email when you wanted me to answer it, corporate world, I've had some people say, I sent you an email last night. You haven't answered it already. Trust me, you didn't want me to answer that email. That's what I'm thinking in the back of my mind. Because if it took me a long time to answer it, it's because I had to have a meeting with myself. I had to have a meeting with God. And then I had to come back and have another meeting with myself. So I knew that what I responded wouldn't be something that would end up on a website publicly later. Because what I wanted to respond initially, you weren't going to like. And I've learned I can take that time for myself. Don't let people rush you into being who you are, into communicating when you want to communicate. Be aware. To your own self, be true. I love you. I bless you. And I thank you for listening. Peace.